Next, we'll talk to rare cancer patient Kelly Leach. Kelly was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, which a cancer we were just hearing about, a type of bone cancer. The diagnosis was 2 years ago, and we're going to meet Kelly and her doctor in a moment, but first, a look at what she's been doing since her diagnosis to raise awareness and money for research and treatment.
I am a cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in August of 2014. I was treated at Memorial Sloan Kettering by Dr. Tapp and his amazing team. I went through 12 rounds of aggressive chemotherapy, 8 weeks of radiation, and I am now cancer-free.
Cycle for Survival is an amazing charity. All of the money goes to rare cancer research through Memorial Sloan Kettering within 6 months of being raised. My doctor, his eyes sort of light up whenever we start talking about Cycle for Survival because he knows that he could get some of that funding and actually make a difference in the world of sarcoma, which is where I would like to see a lot of the money go. Team Pedaling Sunshine was created using a network of friends across the country. We exist in 10 different cities. We have over 190 riders, and as of today, we've raised about almost $240,000. It's quite a force. I know one person in each city, and then they've pulled together their network of friends. So that's kind of how Cycle for Survival works. It's not all fundraising coming from one place. It's everybody launching their networks to raise as much money as we can. And these are big networks. The name was inspired by the fact that I sing You Are My Sunshine to my 2 sons every night and have since the day they were born. So I wanted to incorporate something to sort of recognize that they're my inspiration and my reason for the battle. Cycle for Survival events are invigorating. There's so much energy in the room. It's like a giant party. Equinox is amazing. The gyms are beautiful. The instructors are insane in some situations. We're all here as fighters, sometimes as survivors, and it's like a big family. The charity still maintains a very grassroots, close-knit feel, which is astonishing when you look at how big it really is now. I think the challenge with rare cancers is that there's just so many of them and fewer people to treat. So we have to get this money so that these people have other treatment options. We're still at a very basic level of chemotherapy and radiation, and I feel like we're on the brink of some major discoveries just from talking to people within Cycle for Survival, talking or hearing from some of the doctors at Memorial Sloan Kettering. It feels like we're getting someplace, and the funding from Cycle for Survival is really helping. It makes me feel proud. It's something that I wanted to do. When I set out to do this, I knew I wanted to do it in a big way. I didn't want to just have one team in one place. I wanted to raise a lot of money. I'll be much prouder when we actually can stop doing Cycle for Survival, when we can put Memorial Sloan Kettering out of business and move on to something else other than cancer.
And now, please welcome to the stage Kelly Leach and her Dr. William Tapp. They're here with Atlantic Senior Editor Alex Wagner.
Thank you both for joining all of us here today. It is great to have you both here. Kelly, let's just start. We saw that great video talking about the work you're doing with Cycle for Survival, but just walk us through the emotional process you went through when you were first diagnosed with this rare cancer.
I was diagnosed in August of 2014. I remember getting a call from my doctor who said I had Ewing sarcoma, which was something I had never heard of. He didn't even use the word cancer in that first conversation. So I got off the phone and I knew it was something bad, and I Googled it, which is what everyone does and what no one should do. So I got just enough information to know how bad it was. And then I started researching where to go to be treated. I launched a couple of my own networks who had friends and family who had connections at different hospitals. I knew some people who had been treated for various other forms of cancer. When you do that, it seems like several names sort of rose to the top. We went to a couple different places, got a couple of opinions, met with Dr. Tapp. Our choice became pretty obvious, and I started treatment about a month after my diagnosis.
Did you feel, I mean, it is one thing, and I would love to get your perspective on this too. It is one thing to be told you have cancer. It's almost an entirely different thing to be told you have a rare cancer. And when you realized that you had a rare cancer, what was your thinking?
I'm not sure I could say that I knew I had a rare cancer. I think any cancer diagnosis is a very scary thing. I learned that it was rare more because it's even more rare because it actually Ewing sarcoma happens more in the pediatric world, and I'm over 40. I think I'm way outside the age window where people usually see Ewing sarcoma. What became important to me was to be treated at a place where, even though it was rare, I needed to know that a lot of cases were being seen. So that was a large part of why I went to Memorial Sloan Kettering. I don't know if I answered that.
You did.
Entirely.
Dr. Tapp, in terms of telling a patient and working with a patient through rare cancer, I mean, how is that different than any other cancer, both on an emotional level and a medical level?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most challenging things that we and patients deal with. Having any type of cancer is a lonely journey for the patient and everyone who's kind of affected by it. And you have to handle that your own way, but when you have a rare cancer, you have no community out there, you have nowhere to turn. And I think it's also compounded not only by the lack of information, but just a series of often misdiagnoses and wrong turns or dead ends that people go through as they're beginning to lead up into their diagnosis and trying to find that treatment paradigm. Really what you want to do is to be able to get on the right paradigm and be empowered that you're actually starting this journey. So a lot of times when we first meet people, we have to actually spend a significant amount of time backtracking, explaining the disease and giving an understanding of what we need to do and how we're going to move forward. And I think once you develop that trust, and I actually think that's the most important aspect of my visit when the first time I meet a patient is how do I explain this disease in a way that empowers them, that shows that we are now a team, that you need to be able to trust me, I need to be able to trust you. And a lot of aspects of the care really depends on that trust. The other hard thing with rare cancers is we often don't have very well-defined treatment paradigms. And so if you go to 5 different places, you'll hear 5 different ways to treat the cancer. So therein lies the trust. But I also think that you have to be able to explain to patients why we don't have very well-defined treatment strategies and why their input all along the journey is going to be really important so that we can best tailor our treatment for them.
I want to touch on that concept of empowerment because we just saw the video where you're cycling for survival, and it seems like that empowerment, well, there seem to be 2 distinct aspects to why that is so meaningful, that kind of activity. One is the sense of community, but the second is just the empowerment, the feeling that you are sort of taking back something for your body. And I wonder, from your perspective, when you have this disease that is invasive in a lot of ways, how important is it for you to reclaim your sense of corporal power?
Yeah, it's extremely important. Actually, when I look back on kind of the whole experience, when I started chemo, I gave up a lot of control to Dr. Tapp, his team, to the medications that I was going to take to fight the disease. I was lucky in that I tolerated that medication fairly well, and it worked. But I gave all that control up for about a year. As I was probably midway through, I learned about Cycle for Survival. And it is empowering. It is the kind of place where I've lost my train of thought.
Cycles for Survival, and in terms of giving you that power back, is meaningful.
Yes. I gave up all that control, and then as I came out of treatment, this is where I was going. There's a period of time where you stop treatment, and there's a lot of anxiety at that time, and that's when I launched into Cycle for Survival. Instead of having all those anxious moments that would probably lead me back to Googling, I became very busy with Cycle for Survival, which allowed me to raise money and know that I was doing something for future cancer patients and potentially for myself in the future.
The idea of destructive Googling, I think, is something that everybody in the audience can maybe sympathize with. I mean, I am someone that gets a strange rash, and I'm Googling it, and inevitably, like, it's a terrible thing that I'm plagued with, according to the internet. Doctor, when we talk about that kind of behavior, though, it seems like it's as much a search for information as it is a search for community, right? It's a way of asking the world out there via the internet, does anyone else have this, right? And that idea of fostering community, there's both sort of a positive iteration of it and a negative iteration of it. Talk to me a little bit about how you encourage your patients to develop a positive reinforcing community.
Yeah, I think that type of community can be very difficult. I treat sarcoma, which is actually probably anywhere from 50 to 70 different rare diseases, ranging from 100 patients diagnosed a year to a few thousand. So if you just Google sarcoma, you are reading about many different types of disease. So you often come in with a lot of wrong information and very scared by it. The aspect of developing a community is key because you don't have to travel this pathway alone. And I mean that for the patient, the caregivers, everyone else involved with that. And Cycle for Survival, I think the community that it develops is one of the most important aspects. It's fighting a battle and you're not alone. When you walk into that room, you really feel the energy. You really feel everyone is there for the same cause. And I think that's very important in the journey. When you listen to Kelly, one of the things that you have to understand is she fought this with a year of chemotherapy. These were not easy drugs. This was a constant battle. This is a change in a lifestyle. This is a disease that affects adolescents and 18-year-olds. Instead of going to the prom, you say, we're going to take the next year of your life to really battle this. So having that community and that support is critical for cancer patients. And I think that's one of the most important aspects of Cycle for Survival. The other thing that you mentioned is empowerment. And it's not only empowerment from the standpoint of the patient, but this level of funding, it does something weird. It empowers doctors. It empowers researchers. When you spend your whole life dedicated to rare diseases, you also realize where the limitations are. And when patients come to you for a rare disease, they just don't want to hear, well, we know of the disease. We'll figure this out for you. They want to know that you understand the disease, that you're going to develop the right treatment, and if needed, here's the research, here are the new clinical trials. And this level of research allows us to be empowered too. It gives us the confidence to believe that there's going to be no wall ahead of us as we move forward, and I think that's critical.
Do you think rare cancer patients are more informed about their medical situation than quote unquote regular cancer patients?
I don't know. I think as you said before, it's not always the right level of information. Whereas if you have breast cancer or colon cancer, you can tap into some really accurate information pretty quickly, and you can understand, well off the bat which way to go. You have to also understand that the doctors in the community treat breast cancer, colon cancer all of the time, and the information is there. When you're dealing with rare cancers like Ewing sarcoma, you often go through many different doctors before you find one that says, yeah, I understand what to do with this. And so the information really has to be tailored, and it's understanding the patient, developing the relationship, figuring out what information is right for them, and then how to chip away at that information over time to say, we're not going to overwhelm you in the beginning, but we're going to start this journey, and every day we're going to inform, we're going to teach, we're going to learn from you. Very important.
To sort of drill into the relationship question a little bit more, Kelly, how did your pre-existing relationships change from before and after treatment? Because, this is a bear to wrestle with, and I can only imagine that the impact on your friendships and your family relationships is fairly profound.
Yeah, I've always been very close to my friends and family. I actually lost my mother to cancer when I was 20, so I've already dealt with cancer. In fact, to the point that I thought this would never happen to me. I've kind of paid my dues to the disease. So back then, I sort of learned how to live with friends and family and rely on that network for things that maybe my mother would have supplied for me. Did it change the relationships? A little bit. People kind of came out of the woodwork that I haven't heard from in a long time in a good way. And I reconnected with a lot of people. And while I was fighting, I was sort of keeping a blog to keep people informed, just so I didn't have to tell the story 1,000 times. And I noticed a lot of people were reading my blog and also asking how to get involved, how to help, especially if they didn't live nearby. So,
did you lose? But were relationships were affected adversely through any of it?
I don't think so.
So you think
There
it
were
actually
some-
strengthened bonds?
Yes, yeah. There were some awkward conversations. People don't always know how to talk to you about cancer. A lot of people kind of always want to say, well, how can I help? And there's not really one way to help. Just be there, or, let's go for a walk, whatever it is. So I wouldn't say anything was affected adversely. I would say the opposite, in fact. A lot of people came out and supported me and surrounded me. And then when it was time to move away from that year of cancer and onto something different, Cycle for Survival gave those people something to do to help.
Right.
That it was an easy way to.
It's an outlet for them, but it's
them
also
to get involved,
a pretty useful fundraising mechanism. And I sort of want to talk to you about treating rare cancer, treating any cancer is an expensive proposition, right? We just have stats today that we spend worldwide $107 billion on cancer treatments.
Right.
But rare cancers aren't funded at the same level. And tell us a little bit more about the sort of uphill climb there.
It's a tremendous uphill climb. I mean, first of all, we just don't have the depth and breadth of understanding of these diseases, so a place to start from a scientific level. So we're also often redefining or defining that, and that's important. We pull as much as we can from understanding of, the more prevalent cancers. But really, what we need to do is to define all of these individual diseases, and I think it was spoken about in the session before, and that is also going to help other cancers. So there's just that aspect of what is the fundamental knowledge that we need to gain. Then it's actually having the right people doing the research. And one of the things about this level of funding is you can go to the top minds in the world and say, you know what, here's some funding, here's a rare disease, you're doing something similar, but let's apply it here. Or let's move you into a rare cancer. And all of a sudden you can recruit some of the brightest and best minds. And then one of the things that was mentioned before is getting the compounds, getting drugs, because that's also a difficult thing to do. So we spend a lot of time trying to break down barriers with pharmaceutical companies and explain why they need to invest in research in rare diseases and how that can help change their portfolio. But having this type of research allows us to do that. And then even if we can get the drugs, then it's the cost of doing the clinical research, where sometimes these trials cost hundreds and millions of dollars. And so you need to be able to come up with that money. And Cycle for Survival allows that. We've put hundreds and hundreds of patients on clinical studies. And in my disease, we're seeing people live longer now because of this. And so when we had no options before, we can actually say, well, we have 2 or 3 good new options. And what's beautiful about this research in rare cancers is that it's very collaborative. So we have a very collaborative network all throughout the world, and things move quickly. And we are always at meetings like this talking from our colleagues from around the world. And as we enact clinical trials, those clinical trials very quickly move to Europe, Asia. And so it's really a way to get this research and these types of therapies out to patients. And in my mind, I mean, I can see in my career almost the time and point where things just started to change exponentially because of this funding. And it's dramatic, because when we sit in front of a person, we have an understanding of what they're going to go through. The drugs we put you through are absolutely horrific, but we already have to start thinking down the line, what may be the next step? What do we need to do? And we get very frustrated too if we feel there's a limit in that. I'm in this business because I have hope, but in that hope lies with every day that we're in the fight, we're going to come up with something new. And I honestly believe that. And this is the type of funding that allows for the research that can really help perpetuate, therapies that we can offer people.
You're right. His eyes do light up when he starts talking about this.
True, right?
Kelly, it is, given the sort of rates of survival of this kind of cancer that you have, Ewing sarcoma, it is miraculous and amazing that you're sitting here and talking about the ways in which you've dealt with this disease and overcome so much of the burden of it. But I wonder, knowing what you know about the long-term sort of prognosis for people affected with Ewing sarcoma, how do you think about your future? I mean, are there days where cancer doesn't even pop up on your radar?
No, not a full day. I don't think about my long-term prognosis. One of the advantages of having a rare cancer is that I kind of don't apply the statistics to myself. I think, well, I can be an outlier. So I don't think about long-term prognosis. I don't even think we've ever had a conversation about numbers. Even staging, I don't think we talked about staging of my cancer. But it does affect my day-to-day living for sure. I appreciate things more. I value my time with my family, my friends. Right before I got my cancer, my children were starting to be of school age, so I was starting to contemplate going back to work. Well, that got shut down, and obviously my job became fighting the disease. And now I'm not ready to go back to work. I'm ready to stay with my kids and kind of value the day-to-day and cycle for survival. And this is kind of like a job on the side, raising money for cancer research. So I think I have found my niche.
Those all seem like very reasonable decisions. We have time for a couple questions from the audience. So if you want to just raise your hand, someone with a mic will come around. Come on, you guys. I mean, I have plenty more questions if nobody else does.
I'm Brad Preston from Seattle. Several of the panelists have brought up how important it is to have communication and information, and also the fear of misinformation I'm hearing. So, you know, the fear of Googling too much. It seems like this would be an area that we should put some resources into, of how to get the information to patients, their families as well, accurate information, sites that don't end with .com. And I think this is all doable through information transfer and some sort of publicity. So what are your thoughts on that? And might that be an initiative that Cycle for Cancer could fund?
Dr. Tapp, the question of misinformation.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. You know, in the earlier session, we spoke about all of the resources we should put into that, and I think, you know, having the right type of communication is important. The first thing I would say is, with a rare disease, you have to go to the areas where there's expertise, because that's where you get the right information. And I'll also say, and we spoke about it a little bit before, is the communication is not a one-way street. You need to find the doctors and the physicians and the resources that can learn from you, because that's critical, because even in rare diseases, we're still understanding the journey. And those journeys, again, because we don't have treatments, can really move in a lot of different, treatment paradigms can move in a lot of different directions. Now, the bigger question, what you said, is how do you begin to disseminate that in a correct way? And I think that's instrumental. Right now, you know, in different diseases, you have patient support groups that do it, you have institutions that do it, but information dissemination that's correct should be something as a community we can do, and it's something that's really well needed. It's one of the things that Cycle for Survival is doing, is also really trying to create a swath of really attacking rare diseases, you know, from the level of the patient experience, all the way down to the basic science, and it's a really great suggestion.
I just want to ask one question in closing, Kelly, because I watch you guys here on stage, and it's a partnership. Mm-hmm. How did you find each other, and how is this doctor-patient relationship developed through your course of treatment?
Well, like I said, several names kind of rise to the top when you're looking for your treatment options. When we first met with Dr. Tapp, there were a couple things that he said that I wanted to hear. As a Ewing sarcoma patient, because most of the treatment is focused in the adolescent and younger side of the spectrum, I wanted a doctor that was going to treat me like an adolescent. The statistics were showing that those treatments were more successful. So Dr. Tapp did tell me, we will hit this as aggressively as we can and treat you like we would treat an adolescent. The other thing that he said was, I want to see you. It was very important for me to come into New York and see Dr. Tapp face-to-face before I started any treatment we were every 3 weeks to every month at that time. He wouldn't let me be treated by somebody else at a satellite hospital. He said, you have to be treated by me, I need to see you. And that was important to me.
Well, there is clearly an enormous amount of synergy in the way you guys approach this and battle this, and we're all happy to hear about it from you directly, Kelly. So thank you both for your time, and thank you for all your work, Dr. Tapp.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.